In this video, I'm going to teach you how to manipulate the size, color, and transparency of scale figures to add to a rendering. Now you can see I have the rendering, the JPEG of my rendering of my workspace perspective here. And I do not have any scale figures added in. Now you can add scale figures in as assets within Enscape and Revit. But I tend, just personal preference, I tend to like to just use silhouettes because it can be kind of distracting when there's realistic scale figures brought in. For me, I tend to, want to see, what are they wearing? Is it appropriate to the setting? Are they looking in the right direction? I get hung up on whether there's, light coming in on a part of their body that's correct based on where they are within the rendering relative to a light source or a window. So I tend, because I have a trained eye, I tend to really start to look and analyze if the scale figures are placed and used correctly. And because there's so much room for error with that, and because you don't want necessarily a viewer to be distracted from your rendering, I tend to just prefer to bring in scale figures as silhouettes. And so I'm going to teach you how to do that right now. What I'm going to do first is I have a scale figure, kind of a selection of scale figures right here that are, some of them are a little bit more casual than others, but I'm going to teach you how to bring these scale figures in. And so I'm going to select all on my computer. The shortcut is Control A, Control C for copy, and then I'm going to bring it in Control V as a layer. I'm going to zoom out now. And I'm going to transform this. I'm using the Control T to transform. And I'm going to make these smaller. Now, this is a very, very large image, and so that's why they're coming in so big. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom back into this, and I'm really going to focus my scale figures kind of in this middle part of the rendering. So let me go ahead and I'm going to unlock my background here. I'm going to go ahead now and kind of work on these scale figures a little bit. I'm going to remove the background from them. And so I'm going to use my magic wand tool, make sure I'm on the right layer. And I'm going to grab this background and hit Control X. And so they're gone. The white's gone. There's going to be a couple of parts that still need to be removed. And so I'm just grabbing these with my magic wand tool and hitting Control X to get rid of them. If you undo something or you grab a part that you didn't want to grab and delete, you just hit Control Z for undo. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to finish kind of cleaning up and getting rid of the rest of the white parts here. And so you can see now I've removed all of the white around most of the scale figures. But there's a few that I'm not going to remove because I'm not going to use these scale figures. So this is an office environment. And so some of these scale figures are wearing shorts. And so I'm not going to use those. But for the rest of them, they're looking really good. Now, if I want some additional scale figures, I can bring in this element as well. You can see here, they're dressed a little bit more appropriately. You can see that there's things like blazers and, a little bit more formal or office wear included here. So I'm going to once again bring this in and bring it into my workspace perspective. And once again, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to reduce the size of this and start to pull all the white out. So I'll pause while I do that. Okay, so now you can see I've got kind of two sets of scale figures here. You can see I'll turn them off. There's one set and there's the other set. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate these layers just a little bit. I'm going to create a color overlay on both. It's going to work well with the colors in my scene. So I'm going to start by double clicking over here. And I'm going to do a color overlay. And you can see here when I select my color overlay, I can choose the color. And so once I click on that swatch, I can go ahead and maybe select I don't know, you can do whichever one you want, but I kind of like this more like warm gray color. Okay, you can see that there. And I'm going to do the same to this one as well. Same thing, color overlay. And then you can see it's going to use the same color because it's brought over from the previous selection. Okay, so now I've got my scale figures, and now I'm going to pick the ones that I like best. I think as far as position and kind of, dressed appropriately, I am going to select these two because you can see he's got shorts on. She would work well too, but she's got her purse on her, and sometimes, walking through an office you don't necessarily have a purse. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these two right here. And so you'll see I'm going to make sure that I'm on the correct layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and create my rectangular marquee, right click, and I'm going to do layer via cut. And what that means is now I can get rid of the rest of these. See, I can turn them on and off, or I can just go ahead and get rid of them by deleting them right here. So those are gone. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in maybe this group right here as well, because I think that, from a position wise and the way that they're dressed, they are also looking really good. So once again, I'll bring these over here, and then a layer via cut. And then that means that we can then get rid of these two. Okay, so then the next thing that I need to do is figure out the correct height. Now, when I was creating this rendering here in Revit and Enscape, I remember I placed the art here at about 5 feet off the ground. So right about here is eye level. So I'm going to grab one of my rulers, and I'm going to create the horizon line right about there. And that's how I'll know where everybody's eyes need to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit and begin to scale these people. So let me go ahead and grab these ones in the lower corner, and I'm going to move them to the location where I want them to be. Probably right about there. I want them to just be kind of standing in front of the window and talking. Okay, you can see there's some elements that have been brought in, so I'll go ahead and erase those right now. Oop, too many. Let me go ahead and just grab them here. That'll be quicker. Okay, so now I have their eyes. I'm gonna put her eye level a little bit kind of right at the height of that piece of artwork. And right now you can see they're standing really close to the foreground. So I can move them over just a little bit. And I can make them smaller by transforming them if I want to put them a little farther back in the scene. Right about there. Okay, and then this group, maybe I want to go ahead and have them standing a little bit closer to the door. Once again, I'm going to scale them down so that the eye level is at about the right height, but they're going to be a little bit closer to the foreground. So a lot of times I find with beginning interior design students that they don't always put a lot of scale figures in a place. They sort of think about it like it's, they just sort of put the bare minimum, one lonely person within a space. And we want to sell our clients on the idea that their space is really cool and functions well and it's going to attract a lot of people. And so I tend to prefer bringing in lots of scale figures so that the space looks kind of busy and fun and populated. Now, of course, we don't want too many because it can distract from the image itself. We don't want it to cover up elements, but we like to have, in a space like this, we like to have, a good amount of people inside of it. So I'm going to go ahead and enter and stop that now. And you can see the people in the foreground, the eye levels, especially the women, are right at that horizon line. And then the men are just a little bit taller. And you can see these are a little bit larger because they're more in the foreground. Now I can add more people here, but I'm going to start to change this image a little bit more as we progress. So I don't want to add too many people in because I'm going to start to eliminate some of the elements over there. What I'm going to do next is reduce the opacity or change the opacity of these layers so that they're not as distracting. Again, if I leave these scale figures in just as is, they're going to cover up a lot of the information. And so I want to see what happens if I reduce them to 30%. That's a little light. Let's go ahead and see what 40 looks like. 40 is still light. Let's go ahead and do 50. You can see I'm bringing them in right here. And because they're gray, they're blending into the scene. So 60 looks good. Let's see how 70 looks. 70 is a little dark for me. I'm going to keep them down to 60, but you can see you can start to adjust it there, or you can also hit this drop down thing and you can, kind of adjust the size of them like that as well. Okay, so I'm going to keep mine to 60 here. And because I have two sets or two layers in, I need to make sure that I adjust both sets of scale figures. I'm going to right click here, double click here and change the name. To scale figures right. And then I'm going to change this to scale figures left. And once again, adjust the opacity of that layer. So now you can see that I have a space that feels full and shows the relative sizes of things. And it looks like people are engaging with the space and having a nice time. You can tell they're talking to each other or having a nice little collaboration within this workspace. But you can see that they are scaled correctly relative to a horizon line, which I located. You can see that I changed the color using a color overlay based on the colors within the space, and I've adjusted the transparency so it's just right.